badassery. So this story begins on January 1st, 2015, in Coney Island, New York, at the Polar Bear Plunge. Each year, a group of friends and I show up at Coney Island with hundreds of other crazy New Yorkers who are just bad enough to jump into the icy Atlantic on New Year's Day. We do this together as a way to kind of make a deliberate statement about the year. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to approach the next 364 days. This time, January 1st, 2015, we decided to up the ante. We dressed up. So there we were, 4 middle-aged women dressed up as Wonder Woman on the boardwalk and on the beach. And we all ran together into the ocean, holding hands in our star-spangled bodysuits, wrist cuffs, and a lot of glitter, a lot of gold glitter. So anyway, that was how we started the year. That was how I wanted to start the year, channeling all of the superhero feminist badassery that I could muster up. I did not know on that day that just a few months later, I would actually achieve some sort of superhero-ness. New York Magazine called me the nation's tampon crusader. It's true. And I did not know on that day that I would start making a habit of talking about tampons and periods to audiences. And I did not know on that day a lot of the realities for women and girls and people who menstruate around the world, and how dire it really was. That, for example, while a year's supply of menstrual products costs about $100, they're not covered by food stamps, they're not exempt from sales tax, they're not deemed a necessity. That for people who are experiencing homelessness, for people who are incarcerated, they're not only subject to much higher rates of infection for lack of these products, but abject humiliation. That for girls around the world, in India, in Nepal, in Kenya, in Uganda, their educations are thwarted because they have to stop schools, when they have to miss school when they get their period. Between a culture rife with stigma and taboo and abject complete poverty, it just becomes impossible for them to stay in school. And that hints of that problem exist here at home in the United States. I didn't know any of this on that cold morning. I just knew I was dressed as Wonder Woman and I was going to dive into the water. I came home that day and I shook off all the sand and all the glitter, and I did, I think, what any reasonable person would do next after they dressed up that way. I went onto Facebook so I could post my pictures. And while I was on Facebook is when I saw it. A flyer had been posted that morning by 2 kids in my town. They were collecting tampons and pads for our community food pantry with a little flyer that explained some of those things that I just told you. And their project had a very simple name. It was called Girls Helping Girls, period. My jaw dropped. I just couldn't get over it. I couldn't believe this was real. I couldn't believe I'd never thought of this before. I'm a social justice activist. I'm a reproductive rights advocate. How had this never crossed my mind? So, seriously, I mean, I'm a person who can afford to have a fully stocked supply of tampons in my medicine cabinet. I obviously have no issue talking about it. I could only imagine what a nakedly, obviously painful reality this must be for people who are poor, for people who are homeless, for people who just don't have the means. I took to the internet, of course. I just had to know more. And I basically spent all of New Year's Day online reading about this. And basically I had what I still come to think of as 3 revelatory reactions. The first of which was that in the developing world, this actually is deemed a public health crisis and a human rights issue. In India, for example, 88% of the menstruating population has no access to menstrual products. Do you know what they use instead? They use bark, they use dirt, they use leaves. Not surprisingly, the rates of reproductive infection and cervical cancer in India are also skyrocketing. The interesting counterpoint, though, was that the level and amount of innovation and enterprise that's happening in India and around the world to address this issue is mind-boggling. It's incredible. And these amazing models that enable women to become employed, empowered, and educated by creating their own products and selling them and educating people along the way, giving them access, is just thriving. It's an amazing model. I had the opportunity to go to India last summer and see it up close and personal. It's just incredible stuff. But then the next revelatory reaction, here at home, what was the story? Well, periods in the news on January 1st, 2015 basically ranged from invisible, the occasional health article, to actually really fraught. An article had been published in August of 2014, so just a few months prior, by the feminist writer Jessica Valente, and it was published in The Guardian, and she pondered a world where menstrual products were subsidized or at least just tax-free. And her article, as wonderful as it was, the actual remarkable thing to me was the amount of vitriol, like Natasha described, that it engendered. Comments like, do you want the government in your uterus or out of your uterus? Make up your mind. Or, welfare queens want everything for free. They want their babies for free. They want their birth control for free. They want their abortions for free. Now you want your tampons for free? And my favorite, the violent, I'll tell you where you can shove that tampon. We know where you shove the tampon. That story, that's the problem. The third observation and revelation was, well, is this a problem for poor people in the United States? There was nothing. There was just absolutely nothing. There was a random occasional call for these items in a shelter in Ohio that had a website. But other than that, just nothing. So I started writing. That's what I do when I when I have an idea and I want to flesh it out. And I wrote an essay that day, and I submitted it cold to the New York Times, and they published it. That was pretty cool. For me, it was kind of, that was really the start of the journey. It started this cold day, dressed up as Wonder Woman on the beach. From that to a revelation later that afternoon, and to now what's actually a revolution. We've come a long way. We've come a really long way in a year and a half from what was being said on the internet and what was going on that January 1st. This actually I brought with me. This is the cover of Newsweek this week. This is the article for about the past month, convinced them that it needed to be the cover story. It's a jaw-dropping cover. It's an amazing article. I'll leave it here if anyone wants to read it. Please buy it, though. It helps, it's read it on the subway. Open it up wide. Make people around you see it. Anyway, as a person who has been basically writing about this and thinking about this nonstop for the past 18 months, I just kind of want to share a little bit of how we got from there to here. And the first thing that's pretty amazing to sort of come to terms with is that we have actually changed the national dialogue in the past 18 months. I definitely credit it back to Jessica Valente's essay in 2014. And in the period in which that was published, when my piece was published in early January, another thing happened, which was that another reporter, her name is Lisa DeBode, did an amazing article for Al Jazeera, and it was on the plight of people who are homeless and managing menstruation. And it was just a devastating article. And in the years since, actually, it has sparked activism, it has sparked hashtag campaigns, and it has completely raised awareness. Those two pieces actually kind of oddly, miraculously came out the same week, no connection at all. And then the next week, a report was issued in New York that, about the New York State prison system, and naming the top 3 reproductive health crises for women who are incarcerated. And what basically captured the headline was that pregnant women are shackled during labor while they are incarcerated. But the other one that was a little quieter but made one headline was that the lack of access to menstrual products is a major health crisis for women who are incarcerated. Those 3 articles around the same, within the same couple of weeks sparked a lot of news coverage, and then this kind of wild thing began to happen, which was that activists of all stripes began suddenly speaking and acting around the idea of menstruation, menstrual health, menstrual freedom. my friend who is a marathon runner, her name's Kieran Gandhi, she's a rock star, you might know her, she's MIA's drummer, ran the London Marathon in March, free bleeding, which basically means she woke up that morning, discovered she had her period, and decided she didn't want to run the marathon wearing a tampon, thinking that was the healthier choice. She also wanted to commit an act of rebellion and make a point to the world about what it means to have access to these products or not. She was celebrated in the press, she was reviled in the press, but she made the press. Her story went viral and inspired many other stories to take hold. Photos were taken down from Instagram around the same time frame for displaying menstrual blood, that it violated their decency standards. Again, Twitter outrage and social media elevation, and basically stories like that continued to unfold throughout the spring. And then the summer came, and our big gift in the summer, believe it or not, is our Republican nominee, Donald Trump. Can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. Donald Trump, if you recall, in the first presidential debate in August, unhappy with the line of questioning that he was receiving from Fox News moderator Megyn Kelly, accused her basically of menstruating while moderating, and that she had blood coming out of her wherever. Once again, there was menstruation, oddly, on the cover of the New York Times, and all throughout the media, and even more fun, all over Twitter. Again, women suddenly empowered to talk about their periods started live tweeting them to Donald Trump, at the real Donald Trump, hashtag periods are not an insult. And then we were there in the fall, and all of a sudden, a whole industry related to menstruation, whether it's organic tampons or period underwear, took the media and the markets by storm. The other issue, a favorite that I'll talk about in a minute, is the tampon tax. This has been a battle that's being fought around the world. Actually, in the summer, Canada succeeded in eliminating its national tax on menstrual products. But other countries, from England to France to Germany to Australia, have had very successful petition campaigns and media campaigns, and that issue is also starting to grab the headlines. So much so that by the time New Year's Day rolled around again, 2016, NPR on New Year's Eve released an article calling it the year of the period, and actually reporting that the number of times the word menstruation was used in the major news media had tripled in 2015 as compared to the past 5 years. Cosmopolitan called it the year the period went public, and that was how I rang in New Year 2016. I will not tell you what I wore to Coney Island Pollers from this year. The momentum continued, and in the beginning of January, the state of California became the first state in the country to introduce new legislation to eliminate the sales tax on menstrual products. And a week later, we had the thrill of President Obama talking about it live on YouTube when a 26-year-old YouTuber asked him what he thought about it. That's basically been how the year has continued. All kinds of, again, headlines, hashtags, media campaigns. The Nightly Show has a regular segment now based on this work called Tampon Tuesday. So there you have it. That is, that's kind of the start of the revolution. Now for me, the reason I actually care about raising the national discourse is not because I love talking about periods, although I don't mind. But I actually have always, since January 1st, 2015, envisioned a policy campaign. I truly think this is actually a societal interest and our government's interest to be involved in ensuring that the lives of half the population are met with satisfaction and dignity, and menstruation is a big part of that. So I decided to actually go right for it with the tampon tax. I've been following what has been happening around the world, and earlier in the fall, I joined forces with Cosmopolitan magazine, and they co-sponsored a petition that I launched in October, which has now amassed about 60,000 signatures. And it calls upon the 40 states, so 40 of the 50 currently collect sales tax on menstrual products. I always kind of want to offer a teeny bit of clarity on this because people will call it the luxury tax. So if you hear that being spoken, no, it's not a luxury tax. We don't have a luxury tax in the United States. It's just regular sales tax that's collected on these products. But states have the authority to grant an exemption for items that are necessary so that they're not subject to people are not subject to an additional financial penalty to purchase them. Of the 40 states that tax menstrual products, you'd be kind of amazed to learn what kinds of objects they've chosen for exemption. In New York, Rogaine and chapstick meet the standard. In Kentucky, barbecued sunflower seeds do. In Wisconsin, gun club memberships exempt, called out. So, this seemed a campaign waiting to happen. I will say that since the petition was launched and all kinds of advocacy has happened, 14 of the 40 states have introduced legislation to eliminate the sales tax on menstrual products. What's even actually cooler about it is most of them have bipartisan support. And I don't know if anyone here in this room can name for me anything in this country that has bipartisan support. 3 cities have also introduced legislation to do the same. Chicago, interestingly, is the first to actually see it through. You may have seen headlines that New York's has passed. It has. It's passed in the Senate, it's passed in the Assembly. It still has to go to the governor. But we're on our way, and it's been an incredible campaign. Now, people ask me a lot, well, why the tampon tax? I mean, what's the big deal? It's 8 cents on the dollar. How are you really helping poor people if that's your goal? And my answer is, well, I agree with that. I don't think it's where we need to end. It's just where we need to start. It's been a good place to start. I actually think it's been a good place to start mostly because tampon tax has alliteration and it makes a really good hashtag. But it's not fair. It's inequity. It's true. It's really catchy. But everybody gets it, and it's been a great place to just start a dialogue. And the dialogue that I've been wanting to have is around this idea of menstrual equity. Now, a reporter said to me recently, she said, what is that? That's not a thing. And it's true, I made it up. But it is actually a thing. And here's what it is. It means that to be a productive, engaged member of society, whether it's to be an active and interested and present student, whether it's to be a productive employee, whether it's to be a citizen who could walk down the street with the dignity of not bleeding down one's legs, access to menstrual products must be made. They must be affordable, they must be accessible. It is a matter of democratic participation. It's been this crazy year. I can't believe it all comes back to Wonder Woman, because this movement has moved with Wonder Woman style speed. The array of players in this field are a Wonder Woman dream team. There are activists, there are artists, there are entrepreneurs, there are innovators, there are reporters, there are writers, there are advocates, there are policymakers. None of us actually affiliated or aligned who've come together to see this through. To me, again, focused on this idea of menstrual equity. Please say it, please hashtag it. I need it to trend.
Menstrual equity.
Menstrual equity. Thank you. That is the most thrilling part of this speech. But it comes actually down to even a larger idea that's really radical when you stop and think about it. Menstruation, which is sort of the source of everything, is also the source of all things and the connection to all things that women experience as members of society. Whether we're talking about education, whether you're talking about health, whether you're talking about pay equity, whether we are talking about poverty, whether we are talking about homelessness, it's all about justice. And it's a really amazing place to start a conversation. So there you have it. That is a year and a half in the life of a menstrual badass or revolution or Wonder Woman. And the only moral of the story I can come up with here really is that no one should ever underestimate the power of a woman with a cape and a tampon.